In this video, we are going to write the system of inequalities for a graph. So if we look at the graph in front of us, we know that this is a system for a couple of reasons. First, we can see that we have two lines. So we know for a fact that this is a system of sorts because there are two different functions graphed. What we also see is shading, and so what that's telling us is that we have inequalities. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to write two linear inequalities, one to represent each line, and our goal is to have those two lines have a double shaded region right here in this portion. So we're going to start right here. I'm going to start with this first inequality. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by just writing the equation of the line. So here I have y is equal to mx plus b. And I'm going to try to fill in that information given that dotted line. So what I notice first is that my slope, if I look at two key points on the graph, is going up 1, and then in the positive direction of the x, which is to the right, 1. So my slope here of this particular graph is 1 over 1, or just 1. Then I notice that for my y-intercept, I'm crossing right here at the origin. So what that's telling me is that my y-intercept is 0. So there is the key information for that particular line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that information and I'm going to write it into an equation. So here I have y is equal to 1x plus 0. Now, I know that this isn't actually an equation because there's shading, and I want it to shade in this region here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point in that region and position my inequality so that point works. So say right here I pick this point where x is 3 and y is 1. So I'm going to go over to my equation, put a question mark there in place of the equal sign. Then I'm going to put 1 in for y, and I'm going to put 3 in for x. So here I have 1 on the left-hand side, and I have 3 on the right-hand side. So in order to make this true, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have a less than symbol. And then because it's a dotted line, there's no equal to underneath because it would be a solid line if that was the case. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to take our equation and replace it with the inequality. So we have y is less than 1x plus 0. And you can write the plus 0 or not write the plus 0. It's up to you. Then from here, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to write an inequality for this other line that I see right here. So what I notice here is I have a horizontal line. So what that's telling me is this is either an x equals or a y equals equation. Now if I look at key points on the line, I notice that this is the point -3, -2. Here we have -1, -2. 0, -2, 2, -2, and what I'm noticing is that y is always equal to -2. So that's the equation that's represented by that line there. In order for all of those points to be on that line, they all have to have a y value equal to -2. And then from here, I need to determine what my inequality is, and what I notice here is that all of my points in this particular region are above the graph or have y values that are bigger than -2. And because it's a solid line, I know we have that equal to underneath. So we're going to be on the greater side, and we're going to be equal to due to that solid line. So our second inequality for this particular graph would be y is greater than or equal to -2. So there we have our system of linear inequalities to represent this graph here on our coordinate plane. So example 2 here, we have a different set of lines, but since we have 2 or more lines, we know that we have a system, and we know that we have inequalities due to the shading. So let's start by writing the inequality for this solid line here. And what I notice here is that I have a vertical line, so I know it's going to be an x equals or a y equals line. I don't know which, but it's going to be one of the two. So in order to decide, I just need to look at points on this graph. And what I notice here is I have the point 3, -4, 3, -3, 3, comma, -2, 3, comma, -1, 3, comma, 0. And what I'm noticing here is that they all have an x value of 3. So that's really my equation to represent that line, is x is equal to 3. So I can at least write the equation portion. Now I need to figure out what my inequality will be. And if I look closely, what I notice is I have a solid line. So my inequality is either going to be a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to. And then I notice that the graph is shading to the left. And when I look at the x values that are to the left, what I notice is the x values for all of those points are on the smaller side of 3. They're all less than 3. So what that's telling me about this particular inequality is that my first inequality for this graph is x is less than or equal to 3. And that makes it so that the shaded region has to be to the left of that vertical line. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write our inequality for the other line. And this one, because it's a diagonal line, we're going to start in y equals mx plus b form. So if I look carefully here, what I notice is that I have a y-intercept of -1. That's where I'm crossing the y-axis. And then from here, I also see that I have a slope that I can find. And this slope is going up 2, and to the right 3 to hit the next even point. So here we have a slope of up 2, right 3. So I can now write the equation for this line to be y is equal to 2/3 times x plus a -1 or -1. Then I need to decide which type of inequality I have, and because of that dotted line, I know that I have a less than or a greater than with no equal to because it's dotted. And then the last thing I need to decide is which direction my inequality would need to face in order to include the correct shaded region. So what I notice here is that in this shaded region I have the point 0, 0. So I'm going to test out that point into my inequality, and I'm going to make sure that I position my inequality so that point makes the inequality true. So here I have y, I'm going to put a question mark in the middle, 2/3 x minus 1. So here at the point 0, 0, y is 0, so it's 0, question mark, 2/3 times 0 minus 1. So I have 0 on the left, a -1 on the right. So in order for this inequality to be true, it would need to be a greater than symbol because 0 is greater than -1. So if I now take my equation and I rewrite it with the correct inequality, my second linear inequality for this system would be y is greater than 2/3 x plus a -1 or -1, whichever one you prefer.